But to return back to the virtues and the characteristics that the personalities of the world, that the world wants to recognize, there are other people who don't quite fall into these categories, who don't fall into the narcissist, the sociopathic, and the psychopathic tendency that men must be going against their nature in order to become the children of God. There are some people who don't fall into these categories. These people are poor people, they are the downtrodden of society, they are the disabled people, people who are grotesquely, physically unattractive. These are the losers. And it seems to me that this is the pool of society. This is the pool of society that Christ is most passionate about saving. Of course, God is interested in saving all people, but the problem with the psychopath and the the problem with the psychopath and the sociopath and the narcissist is that they come with pride. They can't quite say, as the hymn writer once said, "Nothing in my hand I bring, simply to thy cross I cling." They can't quite say that. They say they come with their bachelor's degree and their 9-to-5 position working for the Bank of International Settlements, taking skins off children's backs. They can't quite say to God, "I come with nothing, flatten me, reduce me to nothing, and then make of me that which you want me to be." So the losers to the world, the people who are, as I said, unattractive, physically unattractive, people who are poor, people who are disabled, who the whole world wants to hide their faces from, these are the people that are regarded as the losers in the world. Now, these people have a more, they're easily, these people are not only vulnerable to hammers on the head by the institutions of this world, but they're also vulnerable in the churches, because they come into the churches and instead of giving them a coat or helping them out in their suffering, we say to them, "Cheer up and become one of us, become aggressive, competitive, self-asserting, self-confident, narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic, and believe in yourself." This is often the doctrine of the devils that has found its way through the church. Believe in yourself, instead of saying, "God, I have no belief in myself because I've made a mess of my life anyway, and except you make your will be done in my life, it will be a continuation of such a mess." That is how a Christian should pray. Yet we go to these people who are poor, who obviously have no chance. If they had 20 or 30 surgical procedures to make their faces more aligned, they will still be rejected by men. We say to them, "Cheer up." Not because we want them to be children of God and sheep of God, but because we want them to be like ourselves. We want them precisely to become like ourselves, because there's a tradition that comes from the world which teaches human beings that human nature is quite all right. At its absolute worst, it's quite all right, human nature. And its absolute best, when human nature is at its absolute best, it's good. This is a tradition that we get from doctrine of the world. This Christian tradition, on the other hand, however, teaches that human nature is the problem. We learn from the case of reading Cain and Abel that God had respect unto Abel and unto his sacrifice, and unto Cain and to his sacrifice God had not respect. So it seems to me quite pertinent and true that God will not accept a gift from a person that he's rejected, or somebody that is not willing to walk in his complete will, it seems to me pertinent that God will accept a man's character first before he accepts his gifts second, because it is out of the abundance of the heart not only does the mouth speak, but it is out of the abundance of the character of a person that the gift will be given. A Christian, for instance, when he gives his gifts, often feels in his heart that he could give more than he's given. That is precisely the kind of position and the kind of heart that God desires. Not somebody that makes a big signboard, big billboard to say, look at the amazing gift that I've given 1 billion, therefore worship me for, I am the best incarnation of Caesar and Nero put together. That is not the kind of personality that God and Christ would have a man have. So the character of a person is vitally important, and the character of the sociopath, the psychopath, and the narcissist has infiltrated pretty much every single church that we know of. There are people there who use leverage because they have amazing jobs working for investment banks or accountancy firms, and they use that as leverage in the church rather than saying to the church, I've been 40 days and 40 nights like Christ in the wilderness, praying for revelation for what God would have us do in this church at this particular time. Their power does not come from seeking God's face in fasting and prayer, but rather it comes from the world. It comes from the personality of knowing what suits men, and knowing what gratifies men, and knowing what pleases men. Now, having said all of that about the psychopath, the sociopath, and the narcissist in mostly men, I'll now deal with women, and the characters that I will use are in the Bible. The references for what I would say will be found underneath this video in the links that I'll post in this video. It is to be found in the spirit of characters it is to be found in the spirit and the character of people like Delilah, chiefly Delilah and Jezebel. This is not often spoken about in our churches. What is Delilah and what is Jezebel? Because the physical deficits that women have to men means that they have to operate in a different way. Their power has to be, if they have power, has to be manifested in a different way over influence that they would like to have. So a Delilah kind of spirit, we find it in the case of Samson, unfortunately. It's a kind of spirit that is an alluring spirit, a seductive spirit, that doesn't even necessarily want to have sex with the opposite sex, but simply wants to sow seed. This is often said flirting, is often called flirting. Sowing the seed of seduction in a person, in a man or a woman, it doesn't really matter, so that they can then use that as currency to have influence over you, over what you say, over what you do. Because if somebody is being seductive to you, for instance, and you find them physically attractive, for instance, it is often difficult, carnally speaking, humanly speaking, to be able to preach to them if they have sowed the seed of seduction in you. You often pander to them, you often acquiesce to them, and you often make carnal concessions to them. So it's a kind of a way of limiting the scope of influence that the Word of God and the power of God and the Spirit of God can have from one person who presumably is a Christian over another who's not a Christian. And the other spirit is a Jezebel spirit whose modus operandi is complete confusion and complete control. The spirit that operates in the Jezebel wants to completely suck the lifeblood, if you can imagine an orange and juice in an orange. It doesn't want to cut the orange and dispose of it in the bin. No, it wants to squeeze very slowly, squeeze every little bit of juice outside of the orange very slowly until there's no life left in that orange, and then it's used, and then it's finally discarded. So Jezebel wants to have complete control. It's the hallmark of a Jezebel: complete control and complete dominion over a person. And it's often the case that when you look at the feminine movement, feminist movement, you look at women's empowerment, it's all about empowerment, to empower, because the Jezebel, much like, and I forgot to mention this earlier about the psychopaths, the sociopaths and the narcissists. The narcissists, the sociopaths and the psychopaths understand each other. Men who are not narcissists, sociopaths and psychopaths are not part of the party. If you can imagine the basketball team, the head of the owner of the basketball team can be a psychopath. The leader of the team can be a sociopath, and the rest of the players will be the narcissists. So they understand each other. They can be in a game with each other. Now, where Jezebel and Delilah comes in is that the Jezebel is often the leader of the women, like carnally speaking, like the psychopath is the leader of the men. So the women who desire to have power and don't yet have power look to the Jezebel and the highly functional Delilah, highly powerful Delilah, as inspiration for them. It is not really about cohesive engagement with the opposite sex, about starting a family, about having children in submission to the Lord, about peace, about joy, about love, about laughter, about the perfect 9 fruits of the Spirit spoken about in Galatians 5:22 and 23. No, it's about empowerment. So the Jezebel, the highly functioning Jezebel and the highly functioning Delilah can engage in debate and fight with the highly functioning psychopath and the highly functioning sociopath. So this is a fight between those two characters mainly. The narcissist in the end will become, I think somebody said to me the other day, somebody said to me the other day that there are 33 genders. The narcissist in the end will become homosexual or something of that ilk. They will become sexually confused because it will be much better for their currency. It will be much better for their market if they were in the middle of all things. So they could, it's like if you can imagine a democratic party that has to sell itself to as many different types of people who want to vote for it as possible, and it wants to make an appeal to these people's tastes. So the narcissist will in the end become somebody that is not straight in their orientation. So as Christians we have to be careful not to be engaged in this kind of debate and this fight. That when the psychopath is fighting with the Jezebel and when the sociopath is fighting with Delilah, not to engage in their fight. It's their battle, it's their war, and it's got nothing to do with us God-fearing people who want to be sheep for Christ, and people and women who want to submit to God and submit to their husbands. This is not our fight. It's our fight to become more sheep-like and to obey God.